hippie-ish chick stuck in middle suburbia, here to help you navigate your higher spiritual life in a consumer-driven world. Join me for discussions on practical applications of holistic ideals. You too, thank you. I'm good. I'm so glad you're here with me today because I definitely wanted to get your perspective and just, let you speak. So,
Indeed.
where would you like
Thank
to
you.
start? I know this is a heavy, heavy, heavy issue, and
It
so
it is, and first I'd like to say that we could sit here for 20 hours and barely scratch the surface on this entire subject. So I'm sure we won't get all the way through it within an hour, but that's what I like to say. You can't fix hundreds of years of a problem with a 5-minute solution, or in this case, a 1-hour solution. So, I just like to
exactly.
say that, everybody wants to just use just a broad stroke or like a one slice fix all kind of approach. And that's really not it. There's so much to deal with. There's so many things that are wrong. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing, as Malcolm X once said, the chickens coming home to roost. It was very controversial when he said that, but it was a lot of facts to it. And people are treated, on both sides, whether no matter your color, Americans we're under a classist type of oppression. So it just so happens that a great deal of those poor people are Black. Now, obviously, the numbers are that there's more poor whites than blacks, but that's not what I'm hitting on here. So people have been oppressed for so long, and for instance, like the subject of healthcare. If you're rich, you have healthcare, so you're not worried about healthcare. If you're poor, you either have mediocre health care or none at all. So you have acute care at the emergency room, and that's about as far as it goes, and some countries don't have that. So they tell us that we should be happy that we even have that. But a lot of the problems that we have in America are problems of class and and class discrimination, and it's a fight over resources, which goes back to the beginning of time. That people, when people feel that they're not getting what they deserve, you could take just a watering hole, for instance. If somebody gets blocked from that watering hole to get fresh, clean water, they might sneak around for a while and try to get some water out. They might pray about it. They might write a song about how thirsty they are, but eventually they're going to knock the person over the head that's stopping them from getting the water. So what I'm saying is, right now, a lot of looting, rioting, in very small towns, even in Illinois, around, because I'm just south of Chicago here. What I'm saying is that a lot of the people that are looting and rioting aren't doing it in the name of Ahmaud Arbery or the brother George Floyd, who was murdered. They're doing it because it's an opportunity, and they are just pissed off. And they're like, okay, if somebody else is doing it, I'm going to go get it too. So there's a lot of disorganization. The people aren't organized. Definitely not organized. They're being reactionary, and that can be a huge problem. But the underlying anger is justified.
Absolutely.
The way you feel is justified. So a quick story. When I was a kid, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting down at the table with my family, and we were eating chicken with mashed potatoes and peas. And I'm sitting at the table, and all the food got served. I looked over at my brother's plate, who was 4 years older than me. Maybe he was 9 and I was 5 or something like that. And I noticed that he had more peas than me. So I said, why does he have more peas than me? And then my father, very calmly, as I remember it, said, if you want, when you finish those, and you can have some more. I couldn't do it. I just started bawling, crying, because I couldn't stand to see him have more peas than me.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's kind of the thing in America, that people are angry because other people have more peas than them. And
and they feel like they're working just as hard to get those peas.
they're working just hard, yes, to get those peas. Thank you. And it's like they tell you, work hard, keep your head down, save some money, and eventually you'll be rich. That's just like the biggest lie there is. Even if you saved, if you're making $30,000 a year, even if you save a half of your income, that's only 15 grand a year. In 10 years, you're still not rich. You got 150 grand, which is great. I'd be very impressed if somebody did that. But typically, you're spending more than 100% of your income just on getting by, and even if that's 50,000 or 75,000, whatever your combined household income might be, the average person is spending more than what their total income is. So you're supplementing with credit and borrowing money or government subsidies and things like that. So yeah.
Right. And many of us don't even own what we have.
Right.
It's all
Absolutely.
borrowed on credit.
Yeah, most
Hey,
definitely.
can you tip your camera down just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Hold on.
So I can see you. There you go.
Hold on.
All right.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, where do we even start? I mean, it feels like there's just so many layers to it, and it feels so frustrating to try and figure out, how it can be rectified, because, it's 400 years of this been going on,
Right. Yes.
And the only way we're going to make changes is to start small, because you can't just, you could completely dismantle the entire Constitution and start all over, but the chances of that happening, and of an entire new revolution happening, is probably not going to happen. So where can people start small? Like, what are the top 3 things that we can do to start to elicit change?
Well, I believe that the first thing to do is to really do some self-evaluation. I think that's very important. Self-evaluation, then doing research, and then taking action. So you self-evaluate. Obviously, that's a pretty common term. Just to see where you're at. If you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and you find everything that he's saying a little bit crazy, then you probably haven't arrived yet. And you really need to make some paradigm shifts. For instance, like, let's see, Malcolm X says, here's a quote from Malcolm X: "If you stick a knife 9 inches into my back and pull it out 3 inches, that is not progress. Even if you pull it out all the way, that is not progress. progress is healing the wound, and America hasn't even begun to pull out the knife. So, you know, everybody wants to make him out to be a bad guy, and he's violent and all of these things. But everything he said, you know, he probably has some things that make people clutch at their pearls or whatever. But even those more brutal things that he said are valid. And even when he was speaking about violence and things like that, they were valid. At what point are you supposed to hit back? Right. You know, if somebody says, you send your kid to school and you say, you know, don't be fighting now. You know, if somebody hits you, tell the teacher. Okay, I've told the teacher 100 times, this kid keeps hitting me. At what point am I supposed to punch him in the mouth? You know, exactly. At some point, you know, probably not the first time, probably not the second time, but the 5th time, the 10th time, you keep telling the teacher, and nobody, you might have to take action into your own hands. So with that said, you know, I suggest also, once you self-evaluate, and there's definitely a lot of other things you can do to do that. If you can't understand their anger, people's anger that are rioting, and actually, you know, looking at people going in stores and stealing stuff and looting, that might make people disgusted. Like, why are they? I mean, not that it might. It definitely does. Makes a lot of people disgusted, and myself included. Okay, but I understand. I give them a pass. I give them a pass with their behavior because I understand it. Okay, it's not what it really is. It's putting a gun to the head of capitalism. It's saying, look, if you don't give us what we want, and now, like I said earlier, a lot of those people aren't organized or aren't even doing it in the name of justice. They're just out there stealing stuff. But the overall action that's being taken is putting a gun to the head of capitalism. And it's saying, if you don't budge, if you don't make some changes, if you don't give us what we want, what we need, if you don't treat us like human beings, we're going to pull the trigger. And this is just a threat. And the police have really I've, for the first time in my life, seen police utterly powerless. I mean, I've seen riots before, but this one is just so far stretched across the nation. And to see the police utterly powerless because the numbers don't add up. There's 370 million approximately people in America. There's 3 million cops or something like that. I'm not sure. I didn't look that number up, but it's definitely, you know, you can't. There's no.
Yeah, it's definitely not balanced.
Definitely not that much. Not even close. Is maybe 1 to 100 people, 1 cop to 100 people or something like that. So they're powerless. And when we're in a state of unrest, there's really nothing that local law enforcement can do about it. And even so, even the military, you know, there's 2 million people and 3 million in the military. I'm not sure. I looked it up a few weeks ago, but definitely not 370 million. So they would have to take some really violent acts towards the people, and that would just make things worse. But okay, so self-evaluate. Be able to put your feet in their shoes. Even those people who are mindlessly looting, even those people who are you look at and you say, oh my God, why is he doing that? This is not help. Being able to even say, I get why you're mad. Yeah, your actions might not be the best, but I get why you're mad. If you can do that, now you started. You started. You're in a good place. You've had a good start. So self-evaluation, and then doing research. You know, we all think we know everything.
Mhm.
myself included, right? We all think we know everything, especially smart people. And I know I'm going to butcher this quote, but um, I believe it was Neil deGrasse Tyson said, uh, the hardest thing uh, about uh, the hardest thing about it's really hard. What do you say? It's really hard to when you know enough about a subject to think you're right, but
Mhm.
not enough about the subject to know you're wrong. So, a lot of times we think we're right, and we know so much that there's no way to say, oh, wait a minute. Whether it's physics like Neil deGrasse Tyson or it's a subject like race and the history of race. Because we all know so much about it, but we've never really done the research. So I'd say
Mhm.
watch different podcasts. Like for instance, my sister has a podcast. Um, she can be a bit hard to digest sometimes, especially for people who aren't black, white people in particular.
Mhm.
It can be a little bit hard to digest sometimes, but her she's her stuff. China Fox. She's
Mhm.
part of an
Yeah.
organization. She's one of the founders of the OACs called the Omni-African Collective. Also, there's a
And I'll
guy.
post links to all of this that we talk about in the show notes, so you don't have to be perfect in remembering them.
Okay, and another guy. There's quite a few that are really not coming to my mind right now.
Yeah, you had mentioned
But
earlier Diallo Kenyatta.
yeah, Diallo Kenyatta. He's a very bright dude. He's very well learned, um, and he's got some really good stuff online. Um, um, so doing the research, reading the books, read
Mhm.
the autobiography of Malcolm X, read read some Bobby E. Wright. He's a black psychologist who was very prominent in the late 60s and 70s. And one of the things that he taught, if I'm not mistaken, he introduced the idea of menticide, which is the destruction of a people's mind. And that's what black people are victims of menticide, to the point where we've forgotten our culture. We're completely reprogrammed, and we're wondering why we're eating all the wrong foods. We're we're practicing things that have nothing to do with our culture, and we're
Yeah.
like, man, why are we crazy? Well, first of all, we are. We're messed up. Uh, somebody might be listening to that. Well, how could he say that? Well, we are. I've lived around black people all my life. We are messed up. We have issues. You know, and some of us are over sexualized, over hyper aggressive. You know, there's a lot of things going on, right? And I could get into it. I don't have any notes in front of me though. But once you educate yourself, you do some research on black scholars and the history of racism in America, the history of racism across the world, in every single country. Once you do that type of research, once you self-evaluate, then you have to constantly self-evaluate. Then you do the research. Then you take some action. Okay, the least you can do is post your opinions on social media. Talk to friends in person. Um, you can also uh, vote, especially in your local elections. I think most,
That's
if
the
not
biggest
all,
thing.
yes, I think all presidential elections are rigged. I'm not saying don't vote for president,
Right.
but I think just like when Bush got elected the first time, it was rigged. Just like when Obama got elected, it was rigged. Just like when Trump got elected, it was rigged. That's just the last three, right? So I just think local politics are a lot more important. So you want to affect change, you get those racists out of office, you know, the people that are making, I saw this clip and I wish I had to look this up. There was a guy, a black man, who had no priors, no prior arrest, no prior conviction, no criminal history is what the word I was looking for. He got caught with a certain amount of drugs. And then there was a white dude got caught with a similar amount of drugs. Same classification, same crime. They went into the same court, the same day, several hours apart. One guy got 12 years. One guy got a year probation. You know, and I'm thinking
all across the board in every single crime.
Right. So I couldn't really look into it. I mean, I guess I could have. All that type of stuff is public record. But what they said was that the black kid had a public defender. The white kid had a private lawyer, a big shot, high power lawyer. And that's the difference. Money. Can you afford a lawyer? Oh, no. Well, you get a worse sentence then. Bam, gavel, 12 years. Like, whoa, man, what's going on here? You know, and we know it's about that. So take action. If you see stuff like that going on in your city, you know, speak out about it. That judge shouldn't be sitting there anymore. You know,
and oftentimes it's not the position of the judge who lays down the sentence. It's actually the DA that actually makes the plea deal and things like that. And,
yes, certainly.
You know, certainly. Even if they both had a public defender, you know, from the state, chances are that, you know, the white person would have gotten away with less. I mean, it's all across the board, and that happens.
Yes.
It's not always the fact that, you know, he had a better attorney. It's
definitely. Yeah, definitely. And that's sad. That's really sad. But that's what we're dealing with. That's the kind of beast we're up against here, man. And but just take action, you know, in your community. Also, you know, I recently kind of had a paradigm shift about certain things. Like it really used to bother me, and it kind of still does, when I see a black kid with their pants hanging off their butt, right? But what I started doing, and I need to do it more consistently, was carrying a few belts in the car. If you offer one of those kids a belt, they're going to put it on. They're not going to be offended. A lot of them are walking around holding their pants up because they don't have a damn belt. So I've given out dozens of belts, literally, you know, I should have given out hundreds, because they don't have the proper fitting clothes. Now, mind you, some of them are like that style, you know, they got it just hanging just perfect. But anyway, like we look at the way people look, and we judge them based on that, not just their skin color, their style of clothing, the way they wear their clothing, you know, the things that they do. But I had a boss when I was working at this library in the south suburbs out here in Chicago, and she told me to consider the source. Okay, when you look at when somebody's acting a certain way, you have to consider the source. Why are they acting that way? I had a guy come in and he was really irate, and he was really angry, and he was being bossy, and I was like, oh, just give me one moment, let me go get my supervisor. She came out and she talked to him. After she finished talking him down, she told me, hey, his wife just died. He's really going through something, you know, and black people are going through PTSD. You know, we're in a state of constant. One of the things is we're in a state of this constant state of panic. What's the word I'm looking for? Like
Trauma.
Yes, trauma, and we have a scarcity mindset. So it's like, you know, and where's my next meal coming from? Not even so literally, because the food stamp program here in America,
yes, literally.
but literally, right? So, you know, it's like, and then we see people with so much, like you can drive 10 minutes from where I'm at and you're in a rich neighborhood. You know, drive back, you know, it's you're in the slums, 10 minutes away, you know. And then that's not to knock anybody who's worked really hard to get where they are and who's climbed the ladder of capitalism and done everything right and gotten their education, because, you know, it's like they say, if you perform well in capitalism, you deserve to get rewarded. But I always say food is free. Everything that God wanted us to have already exists here on this earth. So anything else is just a social construct or social mores, man. And it's like you beat down on somebody for not having money, fiat currency. And if you're, and you know, I have a college education. You know, I have tons of experience, ex-military. There's been times in my life when I've been looked at as as not worthy and looked at as somebody who was a vagrant or a miscreant. And I'm looking at it like, whoa, just because I don't have nice clothes on, I'm worthless, huh? You know, so, you know, that goes across the board. You see somebody who hasn't shaved, or maybe they smell bad, and you're like, oh, you're a horrible person. You know, I work with the organization that goes out and we feed the homeless. We offer them clothes. We have a nurse on. I drive a bus. We have a nurse on the bus. We have counselors on the bus, and we try to help people. And some of the people that I work with aren't the nicest to our clients, and that's the hardest part of my job, is to see them talk to those people not so nice. So we're out there every single day, and what I'm trying to show them through my action and the way I personally interact with those people is that just because you're in a bad situation doesn't mean you're a bad person. Right. You know, and I grew up in a house, my parents, and I think you know something about this kind of life. My parents were both addicted to drugs. So I learned firsthand that just because you're doing drugs, just because you're strung out, doesn't mean you're a bad person. My parents were loving. They were everything, and they eventually got off of the stuff. But I learned from watching my mom and my dad do drugs and then teach me math and feed me and teach me how to fix computers and sing to me. So I made that connection without even realizing it, that just because you're in a bad position, just because you're at the bottom, doesn't mean you're not trying, right? So I guess I'm trying to tie that into the taking action part and self-evaluating also, is that just because you see these people out there riding and looting doesn't mean they're bad people. It's a bit of opportunism. It's a bit of anger, a lot of anger. But they're not bad people. You know, you probably got preachers and everything out there stealing bottles of Hennessy.
Exactly. You tried the peaceful. route.
Right.
And everybody, bashed Colin Kaepernick for,
Right.
that, and he wasn't being patriotic. And,
Right.
I think we are spoon-fed our history in school, and we take that as gospel. And
Right.
we don't realize
Yes.
that, you can't you can't study the entire history in a small school year, first of all. So yes, it has
Right.
to be
Definitely.
condensed. And second of all, it's whitewashed. The
Yes.
Bible's
Yes.
whitewashed.
Yeah,
School is
definitely.
whitewashed. It's
Definitely.
all in the favor of certain people, and it's just so frustrating. So we have to do a lot of research. We can't take what we learned in school and just run with it.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I know it all. I got it. All right.
Right. Yeah,
I
I
got
passed the
it.
test. I'm good. I got an A in that class.
Right. Yes. I know all about American history.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned about Martin Luther King. I know everything about Black people.
Exactly. Right.
It was Dr.
And
King
and
and
the
it was
thing
Malcolm
is,
X. That's it.
and the thing is, I have two teenagers, and helping them do their homework in school. There's so much spent on, like Revolutionary War and the Civil War, but not even the underlying things of the Civil War. It's like, oh, the Civil War, yeah, we freed the slaves. We're good. We
That's
won.
it. Boom.
That's
Yeah.
it. But, there's so little spent on how the slaves even got here. I mean, the miniseries Roots is what, 8 hours long, 10 hours long?
Right. Right.
Watch that.
Watch that. And that's it. Oh
Watch
my
that.
goodness. Man, I found that when I was a kid, um, I didn't realize it, but they set us down. I was in third grade and had us watch Roots. Now the teachers that did it and the principal, I believe in my heart, they had every good intention by showing us that. And they were trying to educate us on some of our history. But it begins to paint our history with a broad stroke. And it insinuates that that's where our history starts at.
Right.
At slavery. And then most people don't even look back beyond that, especially Black people. There's become this divide between Black Americans and Blacks all over the world. If you call a Nigerian Black, he might say, "I'm not Black, I'm Nigerian." So it's like we don't even feel like we're related. I obviously have like
but isn't that a good thing? That they're not trying to divide? I mean, it's almost like going to Europe and, me meeting somebody of the same skin tone as me, and I'm saying, oh, I'm Italian, and they say, oh, well, I'm Scottish. It's not like I'm white, you're white.
Right. I could see that. Well, I think the problem is not a Nigerian being proud of being Nigerian. I think the problem is more so Black people in America, Black Americans, just to use the term that's most accepted, don't have a home. So we identify with slavery and that being the start of our history. And we've been tossed aside by other Africans or other people with African descent. So even they look down upon Black Americans. So we can't say somebody from Nigeria can look at their history, I mean, theoretically, back 1,000 years or more, dozens of generations, where I can only look back 3 or 4. And I'm pretty sure I could do some better research, but that's the typical story. Your grandmother, maybe your great grandmother, and that's about it. So it could be definitely a positive thing, and I wouldn't knock any certain African country for being proud of being African, but I just think we need to be more, as Black Americans, be more in tune with our history before slavery. And we can't just start there. And that's important. That's important research for so-called Black Americans to do, is know our history, because a lot of these kids walking around with their pants hanging down just don't know their history. They don't know who they are, and they don't have belts.
So can you touch on the issue of white savior versus white ally, and how we as people who identify as white, or everybody actually, can navigate through that and not be offensive, and be an ally without trying to or just be an ally in general? How can we be an ally and not have the title of white savior?
That is that's a great question. And okay, first thing that comes to mind is that Black people, when they see a white person, there's always the presumption of guilt. They see a white person, and that white person is automatically racist just because they're white. Mm-hmm. And even if they're trying to help, even if they're saying all the right things, there's going to be this air of, you're saying all the right things, but you don't know my struggle. You don't know what's going on. So it's like, I just feel like it's like a child, not to, diminish the greatness of any people down to a child, but when you first meet a child, you don't go and start tickling them and picking them up the first time you meet them, right? You say, hey, how's it going? And you develop that trust, and the same thing, like I was saying, I go out on an outreach bus 5 days a week, interact with the people in the poor community, homeless populations, and things like that. And I've only been there 2 months, but now I'm just now starting to get the trust of those people. I just can't just jump straight in and say, all right, y'all trust me. Tell me everything. Tell me all your deepest, darkest secrets. I'm your ally, man. Come on. I know you never seen me before, but I'm here to help. You see, I got some food here. Now trust me. Even though, I'm Black, they recognize, even though I'm a little fair skinned, they, when they see me, they're like, hey brother, So I've done nothing to make them mistrust me. But there's also, when somebody in an official position, whether it's an outreach bus or a cop or whatever, they're going to be looked at with scrutiny, Black or white, red or green, right? You're coming, they're going to look at you with a side eye, but especially white people. So we have one of the nurses, well, all three of the nurses that I've gone out with are all white. So we're coming during COVID-19, coming to their community, administering medicine, and handing out food, right? A lot of people are very skeptical of that. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, and then you got this white nurse on here.
Is this Tuskegee all over again?
Right. What are y'all trying to give us? It's like, mm-hmm. Are y'all doing COVID tests? I'm like, no, we're not doing any COVID tests. Okay, y'all want, some people who are newer to the program, they'll say, do I need an ID? Because they don't want to go through it. They don't want to give you their information. Okay. I could just get some. It's free. Okay, I don't need an ID. All right, I'll take it. Because they're skeptical. And mm-hmm. like you said, we're going through PTSD. So we're dealing with that mistrust, and we're dealing with fear, even though I've never heard a black man say he was afraid. No, nobody that, I mean, I really cannot remember in my entire life hearing a black man say, I'm scared. Because there's this pride thing, right? It might just be a machismo, it might be a crawl across the board that men in general are, you know, but there's that fear. We have fear too. We're afraid of the police. You know, people, instead of saying, I'm afraid, they'll say, yeah, I was a little nervous, you know what I'm saying? But I wasn't scared, right? You know, everything's all good, baby. But he had a gun to your head. I still wasn't scared. I mean, I was sweating and shaking, but you know, I wasn't scared, right? so yeah, but we have that angst, that and then there's a resentment towards white people. So a lot of black people, and I went through it in my youth, I assumed, and I was told, that white people don't love me. They don't care about me. So I had to go out there and meet some white people. So I could say, wait a minute, man, this guy's not so bad, right? And especially a lot of the youth haven't done that. They might have had a teacher here or there that they liked that was white, but they probably never met a police officer that they liked that was white. So you still have that skepticism, and it's a foreign. White people are foreign to us, and I think that's for both sides. You've seen the movies, white people have seen the movies, they've seen the news clips, they've read the stories, they've heard the stories, but have you ever slept in a black person's house? You know, have you ever been to the cookout? Have you, been around black people outside of work in any form or fashion? And I believe the answer to that will be some yes, but many of them no. You know, yeah, I have a black friend, I have a black coworker. No, that's not enough. You know, watching what's that, Tyler Perry movies does not give you a clear representation of what black people are and who we are. Yeah, so
and even for myself, you know, my dad is your grandfather.
Yes.
But the way that we both grew up is worlds apart.
Absolutely.
By the time I came along, and by the time my dad came into my dad got to be in my family.
Yeah.
Or created my family. I'm not sure how to word it. Anyway, he had already appropriated himself into the white culture. I mean, he was hanging out with, you know, white Jews and white Italians and, you know, the white section. And then he moved into the American Indian section. So he had completely abandoned his black history to the point where when we were growing up, he didn't even tell us that he was part black.
Wow.
You know, he said, oh, amazing. My mom was a dark-skinned Indian, and I don't know who my dad was. But then when we did research, you know, we researched it, and it was like, no, you were black. So, you know, we didn't even get to grow up with any of that culture. And, you know, the way we grew up is he completely denied his history and his background and his ancestry until my brother and I started doing research for it. So, you know, we don't even have that commonality.
Right. And that's it. And I believe he did that for a good reason. I think it's shameful that he did it, but he got rewarded. Mm-hmm. He got rewarded for that.
Well, he saw an opportunity and saw that if he claimed that he was American Indian, he might get more disability because he kept getting shut down as a black man, being in the army, having shrapnel in his back, having war injuries from Korea. They kept shutting him down and he kept getting put on the bottom of the list. So he said, well, you know what? I'm light enough that I can probably pass for an American Indian. Let me change my heritage and see if I can move on up.
Mm. Yeah, well, with having that shrapnel in his back too, and that probably, I mean, I'm almost certain that that led to his opioid addiction and his drug addiction. You know,
Absolutely.
you start off just
Absolutely
taking
it
it for
did.
pain,
Hmm.
and you end
Yeah,
up just taking it just to feel normal.
exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, my biggest memories of him were, him laying on the couch all the time.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, there's such a huge disparity between, you know, the cultures, and we just have to figure out how to close that divide.
Yes, I agree. And familiarizing yourself with both sides would help doing that. And like I said, there's really not a lot I mean, like I said, we could talk for 10 hours about it.
Hmm.
And well, there's another thing. You should, like I said, do research
Hmm.
and look into those black scholars, because I might know a little bit, and I know mostly my experience. I've done some research, but there are so many phenomenal black historians, and black organizations, and I'm not talking about the whitewashed NAACP, even though they do some good, but like a lot of new organizations that are springing up. I only feel comfortable talking about my sister's organization, whereas she might be a little brash sometimes, and hard to digest, especially for white people.
Hmm.
Um, she has the right mindset and the right intentions for black people all across the
Hmm.
world, not just black Americans. She
Right.
wants equality. She wants us to, and that being said, her her fiance Christopher Marshall is a real scholar. He's
Hmm.
he's got so many books that sometimes he'll read a book in one day. Sometimes it'll take him 4 years to read a book, because he just needs to digest that first half. But and that's the kind of scholar he is. So you definitely want to be in tune with those type of scholars. Find your own. Take my suggestion, but maybe you need something a little more palatable. So just find that it for you, and familiarize yourself with the more educated people, um, who aren't just speaking out of anger; they're speaking out of facts. And
Hmm.
emotions are important, but you want to have balance. So your emotions should be backed with facts, and your facts should be rooted in the right types of emotions. Um, I have a quote from Malcolm X here.
Hmm.
Uh, when you live in a poor neighborhood, you are living in an area where you have poor schools. When you have poor schools, you have poor teachers. When you have poor teachers, you get a poor education. When you get a poor education, you can only work in a poor paying job. And that poor paying job enables you to live again in a poor neighborhood. So it's a very vicious cycle. you
Absolutely.
know, and I was just talking to one of my coworkers, and we said a good start, and I kind of hinted on it earlier. A good start would be free healthcare for all
Hmm.
and fair schools for all. Because right now, like Malcolm X said, um, if you live 10 minutes away from here, your school has 10 times the amount of funding that my school here in Harvey, Illinois. So if you drive to Orland Park or Tinley Park, which is just 10 minutes west of here,
Right.
you get a completely different education. That should be
Hmm.
illegal. It should be
Yes.
illegal for them to have a middle school lacrosse team, and my kids can't even get books. You
Right.
know, it should be illegal. It should be a crime. So, and a lot of that comes from private donations and things like that. And I just believe like, oh yeah, and the tax dollars from that area, it's a higher income area. They receive more tax dollars. Therefore, their schools are better. That's a crime, you know? So healthcare and schools, if we could do that, then we could talk about reparations. But they're not
Do
giving
the
us
schools not
reparations.
do desegregation anymore where they bus into different areas?
There's a little bit of that. It's mostly well, like let's say like the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago, Chicago public school system does some of that. So you'll see some of the kids on the south side going to schools downtown and things like that. But as soon as you hit the suburbs, there's none of that. If you live in that area, you go to that public school. That's it, unless you have a different address. So if you live in Harvey, you go to a Harvey school. If you live in Tinley Park, 10 minutes down the road, or Orland Park or Schaumburg, you go to a Schaumburg school. So it's definitely some of that going on in Chicago, the city itself, and probably a lot of different cities around the country. But once you're in the suburbs of Chicago, you can't go to those schools. There's no way, no way. And if you do, I just enrolled my son in a school in Tinley Park, and the process was relatively painless, but we were met with some skepticism when there's this new kid joining the Thompson household in Tinley Park. You know, we got some side eyes. And, oh, you guys all live in the same house, huh? Oh, it's a two-family household. Yeah, why not? He did it. He owns a house in Tinley Park. Why can't I live with my brother and my kids go to your rich school?
Exactly. And I know for Atlanta City schools here, there was a few years ago, they got in trouble for doctoring up test scores because there's incentive. If you do better on test scores, your school will get more funding. So, you know, these were in the poorer areas and they doctored the test scores. They got caught. But I mean, this is the kind of stuff that people have to resort to in order to be able to get books and funding for their schools, or otherwise they're going to just fall through the cracks.
How do you stop that cycle?
So it should be, because it should be straight across the board that all schools are taught the same, and they think that they are, but they really aren't. And I think that's why a lot of people are resorting to homeschooling and they're resorting to online school, because at least in online school, you can live in the suburbs or you can live in the projects and you'll still get the same education.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I mean, people don't realize the things that have to be resorted to in order to try and level the playing field.
And that's just so crazy to me. Okay, if you guys want better funding, you better be smarter.
Right.
And if you're not smarter, you don't get better funding. So you don't get new books, you don't get new desks. So get smarter before we give you the funding. But some of that funding is necessary to get smarter. It's a catch-22.
Exactly. And it's not even a matter of them being smarter. It's just a matter of them being able to pass the test.
Right. Testing ability. Right.
Yeah. I mean, they started teaching to the test almost as soon as school started. And the kids were so overstressed. It was just constantly, you know, the kids were worried about, I got to pass this test. I got to pass this test. You know, it's all about the test. And it was ridiculous.
I'm glad you pointed that out, that being smart has nothing to do with test-taking abilities.
Exactly.
You know, you could be the smartest kid in the world and flunk a test because you didn't practice that style of question answering, you know. Yeah, wow.
It's just different retaining, and it's different ways of learning. You might be a visual learner, I might be an auditory learner. And, you know, when the classes are so packed full, you can't teach to a way that a child learns. And then they become a behavioral issue.
Yes.
And then add on top of that, you're in a poor area. You're not eating the foods that you should be eating. So you're eating a lot of processed stuff, a lot of sugar stuff. Your brain is not functioning to its optimal level. And now, again, you're a behavioral issue.
Wow.
I could go on.
Yes, we can definitely can.
Issue stuff.
Definitely can. Yeah, here,
But
sit
yeah,
in this
people
chair
will
for 8 hours. If you can't sit in this chair for
exactly.
7 hours, you need medication or or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Get with the program, kid. I've heard it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then we're feeding them sugar-laden cereal, and a lot of times that's the only food that they get is when they're in school.
Um, Another quote from Malcolm X. I just printed out a few of
Hmm.
them. He says, "You get your freedom by letting your enemy know that you'll do anything to get it. Then you'll get it. It's the only way you'll get it." So, you know, like I said, the senseless looting. Yeah, I get it. The anger, I get it. We could be a lot more organized. But when you're pissed and you're fed up, you're fed up. And then
Right.
if you see somebody if you're just driving past, you didn't have any intentions of stealing anything that day, and you see people getting thousands of dollars worth of free stuff, you just might be inclined to join in
Yeah.
and go grab some yourself, even if you're not a protester, even if you're not somebody who speaks out. You're like, okay, what, free stuff? Yeah, let me get some of that right now.
Right. Hmm.
Yes, so we should be mad. We should be pissed. We should be speaking out. We should be burning the right things. But
Right.
some of the behaviors and the direction and the lack of organization is questionable. But hell
Hmm.
yeah, we should be mad. Everybody should be mad.
Well, and I saw on Facebook there were quite a few of organized protests, and they had set out with the intention to, peacefully protest and protest quietly and, sit in or kneel in or whatever. But there was also, some people that were sent in to instigate.
Oh
So,
wow, I've seen some of that too.
mhm,
Oh my, oh my, oh my.
right.
Wow.
And I mean, there's videos going around. I can't remember what city it was in, but there were two white girls who were defacing a Starbucks.
I just watched that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Putting
And
Black Lives Matter on it.
yeah, so I mean, it's not just people of color who are doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's other people who are trying to make it worse.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anything else you want to offer? I mean, like I said, I know we could go on forever and ever, but I definitely
Right.
wanted your point of view, and I felt it was important to have you on.
Well, I just want to, thank you for bringing me on, and I'm happy to have you in my life now. And
Yeah, I know.
we should talk more. It was a pleasure meeting you for the first time down in
Yeah, that was
Atlanta,
just a year ago.
in Georgia, down in Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been so long. It's been too long.
Hmm.
So you need to come up and visit as soon as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as
But
COVID's
yeah,
over.
right. As soon as the outside opens back up, huh? But
2020 is shaking shit up.
yeah, really.
But in a way, I think it's a good thing because I think it's honestly, from my point of view, and I could be wrong, and you can call me out on my shit if I'm wrong, but I think with the coronavirus and the quarantine, I
Yes.
think that it kind of softened us a little bit and made us a little bit more human. And then when this
Mm,
happened, maybe that gave us the opportunity to open our eyes a little bit more and to see, because the quarantine and COVID affected everybody worldwide, so we were
yes.
kind of brought together. It wasn't just like, oh, this is happening in the United States, or oh, this is happening in China, so I can just avert my eyes to it. So I think it kind of drew us all together. And then when George Floyd was murdered, we were already kind of joined together. So I think this might
Mm,
have unified the forces a little bit more, which is why I think we're seeing so many states protesting as opposed to just Baltimore or just Flint or just,
right.
Minneapolis. Because,
Right.
last I heard, there were at least 33 states that were protesting. So, I
Right.
think it's unified.
Yeah, and then also, I agree. I agree with you. And also, social media is now more of a profound tool than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe people were more tuned in to their devices than ever. So that was another unifying thing. We got unified by COVID, and now we're just sitting at home on our phones all day more than ever. We got more time on our hands. So even the people who wanted to protest the last time we quote unquote springed into action in a reactionary way, which that kind of bothers me, how reactionary we are instead of being pissed off all year round. We should wish we should be. And I fear that 2 weeks from now, nobody's going to care again. That bothers me. But last time, there was a lot of people who said, man, I wish I could be out there but I got to work. Well, guess what? You're on unemployment. Those same people are on unemployment now. So they're like, oh, what? Word? They look on their phone. Oh, they're right down the street. I'm going, So they've been more connected, have more time on their hands. It's, like you said, 2020 is just like the perfect storm for this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hope for all the good and none of the bad, but some of the good might look bad and some of the bad might look good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely opened our eyes to stop, to look beyond this.
Yes. Yes.
And how our actions affect people. So.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm going to list in the show notes, the different resources that you provided. I have a whole other list of resources.
Awesome.
And I want to do another episode where we name off everybody that has been murdered because we can't forget about them.
Let's do it. That's a great episode.
Yeah.
That's a great episode. It's going to be like 17 hours long.
Right. How far back do we go?
Right.
With social media, I think too, it makes everything so quick. It happens, and then it fizzles out, and we forget. We forgot about Ahmaud. We forgot about Eric Garner. We forgot about Michael Brown, and Botham Jean, and Breonna Taylor, and
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so they quickly fizzle out, and so I think we need to keep them on the forefront of our mind until we can rectify. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you came on with me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Oh goodness, this was good. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.